The Rams just signed Myles Garrett, the same Myles Garrett that Ryan Poles chased before the deadline, and the Browns slammed the door in his face. The same guy who shattered the NFL sacks record with 23 in a single season. Right now, he is putting on a Los Angeles jersey, lining up next to Aaron Donald, and becoming the most dangerous player on the team that ended our season in January. And in 2 minutes, I'm going to break down exactly why the Bears could not make that trade, and why Poles still has one move on the board that almost nobody in the Windy City is talking about. But that is not all that is going down at Hollis Hall. And while Chicago is processing the Garrett hit, there's a quiet crisis in the secondary of the monsters of the Midway that is flying completely under the radar, and it might be just as dangerous. Jalen Johnson basically did not exist in 2025. The Bears are bringing in Nazeeh Johnson for a visit, and Caleb Williams could trot out in Week 1 with a fourth-round rookie as his second cornerback. I am going to give you every ugly number, but I'm also going to tell you if there is a real way out of this, or if Poles is stuck with a cap situation that has no good answers. And to close it out, the question splitting every Bears fan from Lincoln Park to the South Side, with all of this on the table, with Garrett in L.A., with the Packers buying Micah Parsons, with the Lions trying to survive without Ben Johnson, can Chicago actually win the NFC North in 2026? The answer is going to surprise you, because there is one variable that nobody in the national media is valuing correctly right now, and that variable wears number 12. Bear down. Let's get into it. Let's be completely straight here, because we owe each other that. Myles Garrett becoming a Ram is one of the most uncomfortable pieces of news Bears fans have had to sit with in years. Not because this is the end of the world, not because the Bears have no shot at competing in 2026, but because this trade, in terms of roster building and tactical reality, exposes a problem this front office has left unresolved. And today, that problem just got a whole lot more urgent. Here are the facts. The Browns sent Garrett to the Rams. The package was Jared Verse, the two-time Pro Bowl edge rusher who was becoming one of the best in football, plus a 2027 first-round pick and additional compensation. The Browns, who have been stuck in the mud for years with no real path forward, basically had to do this in June because waiting until June 1st let them spread Garrett's dead cap money over 2 years, something they couldn't do at the start of the league year. And Andrew Berry, Cleveland's general manager, had literally said months earlier that he didn't even want to waste breath talking about a Garrett trade. The NFL in real time, y'all. Now, why couldn't the Bears compete for Garrett? Because the Bears don't have a Jared Verse. That is the real analysis here. The one beat reporters are writing right now. The one I've been thinking about since the news dropped. The Rams could build that package because they had an elite edge rusher to move his currency, plus first-round picks projected to land at the bottom of round 1 because they're still a contender. That combination is unbeatable in the trade market. The Bears, by contrast, have edge rushers, who combined for 1 sack last season after back-to-back injuries. Shamar Turner and Dayo Odeyingbo, the big bets at that position from the 2025 offseason, basically didn't exist on the field. Austin Booker showed flashes after coming back from IR, but he's 23 years old and still developing. That group, which was already the most visible weak spot on the roster before the Garrett trade, looks even more insufficient now against the reality of what's coming. And what's coming is this. In the 2025 playoffs, the Rams already had a solid defensive front, and the Bears still had a shot in that game until the final whistle. But in 2026, that same team has Myles Garrett on the other side of the line. That means Caleb Williams will have less time in the pocket. He'll need to process his reads faster. He'll need the offensive line, which still has open questions, to hold up under pressure on more snaps. That's not impossible. Ben Johnson has shown he can design game plans that neutralize individual pass rush threats with quick tempo, two-step releases, slot routes that get the ball out before the rusher arrives. There's a reason some beat reporters are saying Johnson's speed-first offense is actually the one offensive system best built to neutralize an elite pass rush like the one the Rams now have. But I'm not going to sit here and only give you the positive spin on this, because that's not analysis. That's cheerleading. And the reality is, Ben Johnson can draw up whatever he wants on the whiteboard, but if Garrett gets to the quarterback in 2.5 seconds, there's no amount of creativity in the world that saves you on 3rd and 8. So what does Ryan Poles do right now? That's the actual question. The market for top-end edge rushers is basically empty. Max Crosby, the other name that was circulating for months as a potential Bears target, didn't move either. Josh Sweat, who Chicago looked at as a more accessible alternative after the Garrett trade went down, also isn't available. Ian Rappaport closed that door last week. Arizona isn't moving him, not to the Packers, not to anyone. What's left on the market, based on what's being reported, is Jadeveon Clowney. And I want to be fair to Clowney here because he deserves that. He's not a bad addition. He posted 8.5 sacks last season with the Dallas Cowboys, who had objectively one of the worst pass rush support situations in the league. If you put him next to Montez Sweat, who had 10 sacks last year and is one of the best edge rushers in the NFC, you have a tandem that's competitive, even if it's not elite. But Clowney doesn't close the gap between the Bears and the Rams in that department. Let's not lie to ourselves. He's a real upgrade over what you have right now. A legitimate one. But he doesn't make you say you're even with Los Angeles at the point of attack. What Clowney does is narrow the gap, not eliminate it. And here's where my hardest take comes in. I think Ryan Poles needs to make that move. Not because it's the perfect answer. Because staying put after what the Rams just did to this NFC landscape would be the wrong call. The Rams didn't just improve their own roster. They raised the floor for what it means to be a serious contender in this conference. And if the Bears want to be taken seriously as a team that can win when it matters, they need to respond, even if the response isn't the same magnitude. Look, I could be wrong, but there's also an argument that doesn't get talked about enough. Poles has been consistent with what this team needs long term. Caleb Williams needs an extension. Rome Odunze needs an extension. Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, Darnell Wright at tackle. All those contracts are coming in the next 3 years. If Poles mortgages all the pick capital right now to bring in a Garrett who costs $40 million a year on the cap, plus dead money, you might be creating a flexibility problem that haunts you right at the peak of the Williams window. That doesn't mean doing nothing is correct. It means doing nothing completely is incorrect. And a measured addition, something that improves the roster without exploding the cap, is the smart path. Clowney fits that description if the price is right. But what we cannot do, bro, is pretend the edge rush position is fine. The NFC West has Garrett on the Rams. The NFC North has the Packers with Micah Parsons coming back from an ACL. The NFC East has the Eagles, who are a machine. The contention window for the Bears with Williams on his rookie contract cannot be wasted, assuming that last year's magic repeats itself. That's not how this works. Myles Garrett went to Los Angeles. And that should matter to us a lot, because that team ended our season in January. Okay, so the Garrett news already had your blood pressure up. Now let's talk about what's happening in the Bears secondary. Because there's a story running right below the media radar that concerns me just as much as the edge rush situation, and I don't think it's getting the attention it deserves right now. Last year, the greatest strength of the Chicago defense was the ability to generate turnovers, 33 on the year, best in the league. That number was almost cinematic. And the two guys most responsible for it, Kevin Byard and Nahshon Wright, were together responsible for 15 of those 33 takeaways. Byard with 7 interceptions, first-team All-Pro. Wright with 5 picks and 3 fumble recoveries, also a Pro Bowler. Both of them are gone now. Byard hits free agency, Wright signs with the Jets for $5.5 million. 5.5. What stings there isn't just that Wright left. It's that he left so cheap that the Bears couldn't even compete to bring him back. Chicago replaced Byard in starting safety, Jackin Brisker's depth by signing Kobe Bryant in free agency and drafting Dylan Thieneman in the first round. Thieneman is a bet I respect. Athletic, physical, good instincts, but he's a rookie. And between Thieneman, Bryant, and Brisker trying to stay healthy with his concussion history, there are a lot of question marks in the middle of the field. But the most urgent story right now is the cornerback room. Specifically 2 things. First, the Bears are visiting with Nazeeh Johnson, the free agent cornerback who was a part of the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl run. That's a move that says something about where the depth chart stands at that position. Nazeeh Johnson is a special teams ace and a situational nickel defender. He's not a starting corner on a Super Bowl roster. If that's the type of cornerback Chicago is searching for in free agency at this stage of the offseason, something is off. Second, and this one's bigger, Jaylon Johnson, who was a second-team All-Pro in 2023 and 2024 and was considered one of the best corners in football, basically didn't exist in 2025. 7 games because of groin injuries, the second of which required surgery. 17 tackles, 1 interception, 2 passes defended. That is not the Jaylon Johnson we know. And right now, there's an active debate in training camp about whether Malik Muhammad, the 4th-round cornerback Chicago drafted out of Texas, could eventually push Johnson out of the starting lineup. That matters in a way you have to understand clearly. If Jaylon Johnson can't stay healthy in 2026, the Bears take the field with Tyreek Stevenson, who still has to prove he can be a reliable starter in second half of the season situations when games are on the line, and with a 4th-round rookie as their second starting corner. That, against Justin Jefferson in Week 1, against Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp in the back half of the schedule, is a real vulnerability. And the structural problem underneath all of this is one Poles knows and lives with every day. The Bears only have around $11 million in cap space. With extensions coming for Williams, Odunze, Loveland, Burden, and Darnell Wright, that number isn't growing much. That severely limits what you can do in the free agent market in July. Now the optimistic case, and I'll give it to you because it's real. Terrell Smith is back at OTAs after missing all of 2025 with a torn patellar tendon. If Smith is healthy and operating at 70 or 80% of his pre-injury level, the Bears have legitimate depth at cornerback. And Kyler Gordon, who also had a complicated year with injuries, is a nickel defender who has real value inside the scheme when he's on the field. But, man, depending on two players coming off significant injuries as a core part of your cornerback plan in a season where you're trying to compete for a Super Bowl is not strategy. That's a prayer. And Ryan Poles knows that better than anyone. The visit with Nazeeh Johnson tells me there's a real conversation happening internally about whether what they have is enough. The honest answer right now, we don't know yet, but the risk is very real. And to close, because I need to leave you with something to think about beyond the problems, let's talk about the real picture of the NFC North in 2026. Because there are outlets already crowning the Lions or the Packers as division favorites. And I have a very different read on this. The Bears come in as the defending NFC North champs with an 11-6 record. The strongest argument against them in 2026 is that a lot of that magic was unsustainable. They won 7 games when trailing in the final 2 minutes. The defense generated 33 takeaways, a number that historically doesn't repeat. Their strength of schedule this season is the highest they've faced in years, with opponents posting a combined .550 record last year. All of that points toward regression. And look, I'm not going to fight that math. There's probably truth in it. Clutch moment luck tends to even out. If the defense generates 22 takeaways instead of 33, the win total probably drops. It's just statistics. But what that analysis cannot capture is the Caleb Williams variable in year 3. The Bears have a shot, and a real one, for a reason that goes beyond last year's record. They have the right quarterback, with the right coach, in the year when that quarterback should make the biggest jump of his development. Williams completed 58.1% of his passes in 2025. If that climbs to 63 or 64, and the offensive line is improved and Luther Burden makes the second-year leap everyone's expecting, that's an offense that can outscore anyone in the NFC. The Lions, the strongest rival on paper, still have Dan Campbell on the sideline. Without Ben Johnson, without Aaron Glenn, his record since losing both of those coordinators is not the record of a team that dominates a division. The Packers traded for Micah Parsons, but he's already on the PUP list with an ACL. The Vikings have too much uncertainty at quarterback to be real favorites. The Bears aren't the clear market favorites they were last year. CBS Sports has their win total line at 9.5, with the over at plus money. I've got 10 wins as my base number, not because I'm ignoring regression, because I believe Caleb Williams hasn't hit his ceiling yet. And a quarterback who hasn't hit his ceiling, with Ben Johnson calling the plays, is the most valuable asset any team in the NFC can hold. Bear down. That's what I got today, fam. It was a heavy one. Myles Garrett in navy and orange on the wrong coast stings. The secondary questions are real, but the Bears are still the Bears. And Caleb Williams still hasn't shown us everything he's got. And honestly, that should scare the rest of the NFC. If this video fired you up, hit the like, subscribe if you're not already in here, and tell me down in the comments. Do you think Poles needs to sign Jadeveon Clowney before training camp? Or do you trust what this roster already has? I want to read every single one. See you in the next one.